Chicago police officer shot, killed in Chatham. Suspects in custody, CPD officials say. A Chicago police officer was shot and killed Thursday evening on the South Side, CPD officials said. The incident happened at East 82nd Street and South Drexel Avenue in Chatham. While Chicago police officers were conducting an investigatory stop at the location, a suspect fled into a nearby apartment building, CPD Superintendent Larry Snelling said during a 2:45 a.m. news conference Friday. The officers pursued the suspect into the building, where they encountered a different suspect who was armed with a rifle, Snelling said. An officer fired their weapon during the incident. A 36-year-old female officer was shot and was taken to the University of Chicago Hospital in a squad car, officials told ABC7. She later died due to her injuries, Snelling said. The deceased officer's name was not yet released. She was with the department for 4 years at the 6th District and was a mother, Snelling said. Multiple people were taken into custody after the shooting, Snelling said. Charges are pending as police investigate. No other injuries were reported. A large police presence could be seen by ABC7's crews near the location of the shooting late Thursday evening. Tactical units were on scene, and police deployed drones and helicopters in their search. The sun had barely begun to rise over Chicago's South Side when the call came in, a routine domestic disturbance in Chatham. At 6:42 a.m., Officer Miguel Santiago responded with the same courage and commitment he had shown every day for the past 7 years with the Chicago Police Department. By 7:15 a.m., he would be gone, another fallen hero, shot in the line of duty in a city still grappling with violence that too often targets those sworn to protect it. Chatham, once a proud neighborhood built on dreams and dignity, has struggled in recent years under the weight of crime, poverty, and broken promises. On this particular morning, the stillness of the neighborhood was shattered by the piercing sound of gunfire, followed by sirens that seemed to scream in mourning. Officer Santiago had been the first on the scene, responding to a 911 call from a frightened mother reporting her son's erratic behavior. Neighbors would later say the young man had been battling mental illness, his struggle worsened by isolation and drugs. When Santiago arrived, his goal, as always, was to de-escalate, to calm, to protect. Witnesses say he tried talking to the suspect, keeping a careful distance, his voice steady and calm. But in a split second, everything changed. The suspect, 22-year-old Jamal Reed, reportedly pulled a handgun from his waistband and fired. Santiago was struck in the chest, just beneath his protective vest. His partner returned fire, wounding the assailant and calling for immediate backup. As Santiago lay bleeding on the cracked concrete steps of a red brick two-flat, neighbors came out, their screams echoing through the air. One woman clutched her rosary. Another wept into her apron. Children watched from behind curtains, too young to understand the politics, but old enough to feel the heartbreak. By the time Santiago arrived at the University of Chicago Medical Center, doctors said the damage was too severe. At 8:12 a.m., he was pronounced dead. The city stood still. A family in mourning. Officer Santiago was more than a uniform. He was a husband to Maria, a father to 4-year-old Elena and 6-year-old Louis, and a son to immigrant parents who raised him to believe in service, sacrifice, and justice. He grew up not far from the very neighborhood where he lost his life, a proud graduate of Kenwood Academy, where he'd once written an essay titled, "Why I Want to Wear the Badge." He didn't want to be a hero, Maria whispered through tears, standing outside their modest bungalow later that day. He just wanted to make a difference. As the news spread across the city, tributes poured in. Fellow officers donned black mourning bands over their badges. Flags at precincts across Chicago were lowered to half staff. A line of patrol cars formed outside the hospital, lights flashing silently, a tribute to their fallen brother. But beneath the formalities, there was raw pain, anger, and an exhaustion that comes from knowing this wasn't the first time. A community fractured, yet united. In Chatham, the grief ran deep. Not just for Officer Santiago, but for Jamal Reed too. Many knew him, a boy who once helped carry groceries for elders, now a tragic symbol of what happens when systems fail. Mental health resources had been cut. Violence had surged, and the street became a battlefield for souls lost too soon. Yet in the aftermath of the shooting, something remarkable happened. The community gathered. Candles were lit at the corner of 79th and Champlain, where Officer Santiago had taken his final breath. Strangers prayed together. Pastors offered words of unity. A local rapper who once mistrusted police stood on a milk crate and said into a megaphone, "This man died trying to help. That's real. That's pain. And we can't let it be in vain." Even the children, so often shielded from the pain, joined the vigil, their tiny hands placing flowers at the foot of a lamppost now covered in blue ribbons and handwritten messages. From grief, a call for change. Mayor Brendan Johnson held a press conference later that day, his voice somber and heavy. Today, Chicago lost one of its finest. A man who ran toward danger, who tried to bridge the gap between law enforcement and community. We owe it to him to do better. He pledged more investment in mental health, more outreach in at-risk neighborhoods, and an immediate review of police response protocols for psychiatric emergencies. But for many, the promises felt familiar. Words that echo after each tragedy, but fade with the news cycle. Still, something felt different this time. Maybe it was the way Maria Santiago stood in front of the cameras that evening, holding her children's hands, and said Miguel believed in this city. He believed in its people. Let's not let his death be another hashtag. Let's make it a turning point. The badge and the burden. Chicago has long been a city of contrasts, of breathtaking skylines and broken sidewalks, of opportunity and oppression. But the story of Officer Miguel Santiago adds another layer. A man who wore the badge with pride, who patrolled not to dominate, but to protect. Who died not in a dramatic chase or a planned ambush, but in a quiet attempt to help someone in need. As the city prepares for his funeral, with bagpipes and solemn salutes, one can only hope his death lights a fire for reform. That it sparks deeper conversations about mental health, community trust, and what it truly means to serve and protect. But above all, let us remember the man. Not just the officer. The father who built Lego castles with his kids. The husband who brought flowers on random Tuesdays. The neighbor who shoveled snow for the elderly couple next door. The boy from the South Side who dreamed of making his city safer and gave everything trying.